Hi, I'm Professor Matthew Burns. I'm an associate professor here at Cobleskill in the Humanities Department. And I'm going to be reading some poems from my debut poetry collection, Imagine the Glacier, that came out back in March. And this first one's called The Pig, the Hog. Dawn so cold that a fat pig, a hog, was found alive but frozen to the side in the ground. That must have been mud when it laid its pink bulk down last night. We walked around and tried to figure just how to free it without too much blood or suffering. No pry bars or tow hooks, the ground too hard for shovels. And the pig, the hog, that rooted largeness, exhaled into the morning but did not struggle or cry out. It laid and blinked its tired eyes when we stroked its head and put feed to its warm snout that sniffed for the rising day. We waited, and when it finally stood, unlatched from the cold stone returning to mud under a higher sun, there was the clean outline of its whole body left behind. I put my hand in that memory of the pig and could feel each minute of her long night pressed back, and I was scared. A lot of these were written or inspired by time I lived in Binghamton and time I lived out in Washington State and Yakima, Washington. So here's a garden poem. There's a couple of garden poems in here, ironically. It's called Shovel and Rasp. I said I'd be in the garage with a drink, putting an edge on the shovel to hone it, blade the rounding steel, the way I'd heard it should be done before and after every season. I bought a rasp and a file too, for just this and every moment that settles into the hollow of rest between work or after, when there is time to sit in a chair and hold things gently. The ground is frozen a foot deep, but the burrs of metal settling into the dust of snow and the bare yellow bulb light will end up in the soil come March, just when the eager black earth can be turned over again to steam in the new sun. And then, in the early dusk, hours, months later, I will sow flecks of blade again, deep for the long winter ahead, with hands stronger and rougher than they are now. My hands ache for a strength they have not known. But I stack another empty on the top shelf in the corner and sit down in the lawn chair left open to the stubbly fields that unroll in dark hills away from me, into the past where every last son has tried to dig his way out. Tonight, I am the last one, with steel slivers in my palms, waiting for the ground to thaw. Tonight, I am the field. Tonight, I am the shovel and rasp, the blade and its bright new edge. Here's a Binghamton poem where I grew up, went back, did grad school there. Strange experience. So it's called How to Go Home. Head north. Forget the warehouses held up by planks and the railroad tracks coated black with coal, or rather do not hate them the way you did when they bent into you, tall and long. Dust under your nails, grease in your veins. Look at the rivers in their swell. They have nothing against you. They do not care. Not about the time in '89, in January, when you almost drowned setting old tires on fire and sliding them across the ice like cheap comets. Your weight too much, the stink of melting rubber and the heat too much, and then the cold that felt hot for a good minute once you were in, neck deep. And they still do not care about the 1,000 small rocks you've kicked from the trestle, nor the heavy ones you heaved at the coffins when they floated south after May rains washed them from their plots, pulled them away to new grounds downstream. The river does not even remember you. Keep in mind, the firehouse and the creamery and the public pool from first grade all do not know your name, even if they're still there, holding on to the ground beneath, the ground holding on to, the way everything here holds on, desperately, so it will not be ripped away. Behold, be held stand in the hills, sit down in the parking garage, and lie down in the bottle return at the grocery store. It all points to the same sure thing. It will be waiting when you come back. All of it. For those of you who don't know, Virga is a meteorological event where you can see rain falling, but that rain never hits the ground. And I wrote this in Yakima, Washington, which is central Washington, high desert, so that happened a lot. The rain was up there, but it never made it to us. So this one's called Virga. I'm cutting the sleeves off of every shirt I own and drinking warm wine from a chipped jam jar. The thunder and heat lightning that breaks over the ridge is thick June's gnashing of teeth. This and this and this I point to in the dark is me trying to say we should never be far away from whatever has grown to be called home. We are far away from home and lit in intervals by the orange and blue light from 10,000 feet up. It stands our fine hairs on end and runs down my arm, bare shoulder to bare wrist to trembling hand in glass. And the air is warm and tastes like concentric spheres of sky pressed into a pair of ions that sit on my lips like invisible shards of glass. Cut that skin and move to yours when we kiss and sweat under the ridge, suddenly lit and now suddenly dark again. Do one more for you. Yes, one more. Another garden poem. It's called Rhubarb. The poison lives only in the leaves, thick with instant bitterness to warn you. And my Polish grandmother said that this was to kill off the lazy ones, the stupid ones, the ones who wanted things handed to them, who couldn't find it in themselves to dig. And planting it told everyone you didn't mind dirt under your nails, that you knew life was hard work if you did it right. So she grew more than the whole family could eat. By May, her narrow terraced backyard in the city's first ward was a lapping sea of palm-sized leaves. By June, a solid ruff of green. A pruning knife's hooked blade biting through the stalks with a flick of her wrist and a quick snap. The one time I tried this, I sliced deep into my thumb knuckle at first swipe. We were both red inside. Me, the rhubarb. That's the stuff I didn't really think about at 10. How everything bleeds, how everything must die somehow. The stupid ones poisoned, the hard workers heart-worn and wrecked. We ate the rhubarb raw, stripped of all its leaves. Dipped in sugar, it still lingered bitter on our tongues as a little inoculation against the worst of what was yet to come.